It was a chilly evening when Jared's mom dropped him off at the old fairgrounds. The carnival was in town, and he'd been begging to go for days. Strings of flickering lights swayed above the rides, and the smell of popcorn mixed with the faint scent of engine oil from the machines. Jared pulled his hoodie tighter as he wandered through the crowd. He noticed the clown tent near the edge of the carnival. The sign above it read, "The Laugh Factory. Don't miss the show." Something about it felt off. The clowns on the posters weren't smiling. Their painted-on grins stretched too wide, their eyes cold and empty. $5 for the best laughs of your life, called a man at the entrance, his face hidden behind a cheap paper mask of a clown. Jared hesitated but handed over the money. Inside, the tent was dimly lit, the air thick with the smell of sawdust and grease paint. Rows of folding chairs formed a circle around a small stage. A few other kids sat scattered around, but the tent wasn't crowded. The lights dimmed, and music began. An old, scratchy tune from a calliope. 4 clowns stepped onto the stage. Their costumes were mismatched and grimy, their makeup cracked. They moved strangely, almost as if they were puppets on strings. The lead clown, a tall figure with a red nose that seemed too big for his face, spoke in a voice that was both high-pitched and hollow. "Welcome to the Laugh Factory, where we'll turn your frowns upside down." At first, the routine seemed harmless, slipping on banana peels, juggling pies. But Jared noticed something was wrong. None of the other kids were laughing. They were staring, their eyes wide and unblinking. One by one, the clowns began pulling kids from the audience to join the act. A girl in a pink jacket was handed a balloon animal, but when she touched it, her face froze, her smile stretching unnaturally wide. She sat back down without saying a word, her body stiff like a mannequin. Jared's chest tightened. He tried to leave, but his feet wouldn't move. It was like the clown's eerie, painted eyes were holding him in place. "Your turn," the lead clown suddenly said, pointing a gloved hand at Jared. "No, thanks," Jared mumbled, but his legs betrayed him. He stumbled forward onto the stage. The clown handed him a red balloon, its surface shiny and slick like wet paint. "Hold tight," the clown whispered. The moment Jared's fingers touched the balloon, he felt something cold seep into his skin. His vision blurred, and the sound of laughter filled his ears. Not his own, but a chorus of strange, hollow laughs echoing from the tent walls. Jared blinked and found himself back in his chair. The clowns were bowing as the calliope music reached its final jarring note. The other kids were already leaving, their movements stiff and robotic. Jared's hands trembled as he stood, dropping the balloon. When he stepped outside, the carnival was empty. The rides were still, the lights dark. Jared spun around, but the tent was gone. All that remained was the sound of faint, distant laughter carried on the wind. He reached for his phone to call his mom, but froze when he caught his reflection in the screen. His face was pale, his lips stretched into a wide, painted grin. His own laugh escaped before he could stop it, a high-pitched, hollow sound that wasn't his at all. Mia lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened. She loved her evening walks. They helped clear her mind after long days. This time, she decided to take a different route, passing by a row of construction sites where new homes were being built. The streetlights here were sparse, their dim glow casting long, jagged shadows across the half-finished structures. That's when she saw it, a figure standing perfectly still at the far end of the street. It was a clown. The costume was vivid, a yellow jumpsuit with oversized buttons and frills around the neck. The clown's face was pale, its smile painted in a thick, exaggerated red. Its hands, clad in white gloves, dangled unnaturally at its sides. Mia stopped in her tracks, her heart pounding. The clown didn't move. Mia chuckled nervously. "Probably just someone playing a prank," she muttered to herself, walking faster. As she passed the next street light, she glanced back. The clown was closer, not running, not walking, just closer. Her pace quickened, her sneakers scuffing the pavement. She turned a corner, forcing herself to stay calm. When she looked back again, the clown was there, standing under a flickering streetlight. Its head tilted slightly to the side as though curious. Mia's throat tightened. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling as she opened the camera. She snapped a picture, but when she glanced at the screen, the clown wasn't there, just an empty street. "Okay, this is insane," she whispered, her voice shaking. She turned onto her own street, relief flooding her when she saw her house. The porch light was on, the warm glow promising safety. She hurried up the steps, unlocking the door with shaking hands and locking it behind her. Mia pressed her back against the door, exhaling shakily. "Just my imagination," she said aloud, trying to convince herself. Her phone buzzed. A text. It was an image. Her house, taken from the street. Mia's blood turned to ice. She peeked through the curtains. The street was empty, but when she looked down at her phone again, there was another message. "You dropped this." Attached was a photo of her keychain, the one she hadn't realized she'd dropped in her panic. A shadow moved across the porch. She heard a faint, wet squeak, like a rubber shoe against the wooden steps. Mia's breath caught as she backed away from the door. A soft knock echoed through the house, slow and deliberate. Then came the laugh, low and guttural. It grew louder, more hysterical, until it echoed in her ears, making her head throb. She froze as the doorknob turned, and then silence. When she opened her eyes, the door was still locked. Her keychain was on the porch, perfectly placed in the center. Mia didn't sleep that night, but she swore she could still hear faint laughter outside her window, just beyond the edge of the light. Ethan and his friends had heard the stories for years, whispers about the abandoned circus in the woods just outside of town. No one knew why the circus shut down, but everyone talked about the clown who never left. Some said he still wandered the grounds, waiting for someone foolish enough to come close. One chilly autumn evening, Ethan and his friends stood at the edge of the woods. His friends dared him to check it out. "Come on, Ethan," Jake teased, nudging him. "Just go look. We'll wait right here." "Fine," Ethan muttered, trying to sound braver than he felt. He turned on his flashlight and stepped into the trees. The deeper Ethan went into the woods, the quieter it became. Even the crunch of leaves under his sneakers seemed muffled. Finally, the circus came into view. The tent was enormous, its once bright colors now faded and torn. Rusting carnival rides loomed in the darkness, their outlines jagged and unnatural. Ethan's flashlight flickered as he approached the main tent. The flap hung open, swaying slightly in the breeze. A faint sound came from inside, like someone humming. "Hello?" Ethan called out, his voice shaky. The humming stopped. Ethan hesitated, but his friend's laughter echoed in his head. He couldn't go back empty-handed. Taking a deep breath, he stepped inside. Inside, the air was stale, and the flashlight's beam barely pierced the darkness. Ethan's foot kicked something soft, a clown shoe. He swallowed hard and moved the light. Sitting in the middle of the tent was a clown. It didn't move, didn't even look at him at first. Its costume was filthy, the bright reds and yellows smeared with dirt. The painted smile on its face was uneven, cracked like old porcelain. "Are you okay?" Ethan stammered. The clown's head snapped up. Its eyes gleamed, bright and alive, a sharp contrast to its lifeless face. Slowly it stood, its long limbs unfolding like a marionette. Ethan took a step back. The clown smiled wider. "Stay," it whispered, the word barely audible. Ethan bolted. He didn't stop to think. He didn't even look back. The trees whipped past as he sprinted through the woods, his breath coming in gasps. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Not running, just steady, deliberate steps. "Stay." The clown's voice echoed again, closer this time. Ethan tripped, crashing to the ground. His flashlight rolled away, its beam casting wild, spinning shadows. When he scrambled to his feet, the clown was there, standing just a few feet away. Its painted face loomed in the flashlight's glow, and its hand held something shiny, a long, rusted knife. Ethan froze. The clown's smile stretched impossibly wide. "Stay," it hissed one last time before lunging. Jake and his friends waited for a couple of hours, thinking Ethan had gotten scared and just run home. They laughed it off and went back to talking about other things. But the next morning, everything changed. Ethan's mom came over to Jake's house, her face pale and voice shaking. She asked if Ethan had stayed with Jake or any of the other boys because he hadn't come home last night. Panicked, Jake and the others grabbed their bikes and started searching. They retraced their steps to the woods and the abandoned circus tent. That's when they saw it. The flashlight was lying in the dirt just outside the circus tent. A cold feeling crept over them as they noticed the footprints, Ethan's, leading into the tent, but there were none coming out. They never found Ethan. To this day, people say if you go near the woods late at night, you might hear faint humming, and if you look closely, just beyond the trees, you might catch a glimpse of a figure in a dirty clown suit, waiting for someone else to come close. The flyer had appeared in every mailbox in the neighborhood. "Hire Mr. Chuckles for your next party," it read, with a picture of a grinning clown holding a bundle of balloons. The man behind the makeup had wide, staring eyes that didn't match the cheerful expression painted on his face. Liam's parents thought it would be fun for his 10th birthday. He wasn't so sure. He didn't like clowns, but they insisted, and soon the backyard was filled with laughter and party games. Then Mr. Chuckles arrived. He stepped out of his van, dressed in a striped suit and oversized shoes. His painted smile stretched ear to ear, and his voice was unnervingly cheerful. "Who's ready for some fun?" he bellowed, waving a balloon animal in the air. But when Liam looked into his eyes, all he saw was emptiness. At first, everything seemed normal. Mr. Chuckles made balloon animals, performed clumsy tricks, and told jokes. The kids laughed, and Liam began to relax. But then, as the sun dipped lower, Mr. Chuckles' jokes grew darker. He made a balloon animal that didn't look like anything Liam recognized. It was twisted and misshapen. "What's that supposed to be?" Liam asked hesitantly. Mr. Chuckles leaned in close, his breath hot against Liam's ear.
"It's you,"
he whispered. Liam pulled back, startled, but the clown just laughed and began juggling. The other kids didn't seem to notice anything strange. When Liam's parents called the kids to the table for cake, Mr. Chuckles stood in the corner, watching. He didn't move. He didn't even speak. He just watched. After the cake, Liam realized Tyler wasn't at the table anymore. He glanced around, expecting to see him running with the others, but he was nowhere in sight. "Where's Tyler?" Liam asked his mom. "Maybe he went inside," she said distractedly, cleaning up plates. Liam went into the house to look. It was quiet, too quiet. As he passed the hallway leading to the basement, he heard a soft, rhythmic squeak. He peered down the stairs. At the bottom, barely lit by the dim light, stood Mr. Chuckles. He wasn't smiling anymore. His painted grin seemed warped, his real mouth twisting into something cruel. He was holding one of the balloons, slowly stretching and twisting it. Behind him, Liam saw movement. Tyler, tied to a chair, tears streaming down his face. Liam stumbled back, but the clown looked up. "Don't ruin the surprise, birthday boy," Mr. Chuckles called, his voice a chilling mixture of playfulness and malice. Liam ran to get his parents, his heart pounding. "Tyler's with the clown. He's in the basement. Please, you have to help." His parents exchanged confused looks. "Clown?" his dad repeated. "There was no clown at the party, Liam," his mom said, frowning. Liam shook his head furiously. "Yes, there was. Mr. Chuckles. He took Tyler." They followed him to the basement, but it was empty. No clown. No Tyler, just a pile of balloons on the floor. His mom's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "Where is he?" she asked, voice growing tense. His dad checked the door leading outside. He couldn't have left on his own, could he? He muttered, looking uneasy. "Maybe he's hiding somewhere upstairs." They searched the house, calling Tyler's name, checking every room, but found nothing. Minutes turned into an hour, and the worry began to build. Liam's mom grabbed her phone. "I'm calling his parents," she said, voice trembling. By the time Tyler's parents arrived, concern had turned into panic. They demanded answers. The police were called, and a search began. The other children had already been sent home, their worried parents unaware of the gravity of the situation. Liam kept trying to explain about Mr. Chuckles, the clown in the basement, the way Tyler had screamed, but no one believed him. "The police checked the photos and asked around," Liam's dad said, shaking his head. "Everyone insists there was no clown at the party." Liam's parents grew increasingly frustrated. "Liam, stop making up stories," his dad snapped. "This isn't a joke." Liam's chest tightened. "But there was a clown. Mr. Chuckles, he was at the party. He took Tyler." His voice wavered, desperate for them to believe him. His dad's expression hardened. "Liam, there was no clown. We didn't hire one, and no one else saw one. This isn't helping." He took a deep breath, rubbing his temples. "You're tired. I know this is a nightmare, but you're just imagining things." Liam's confusion grew. How could they forget? How could they not remember the clown? He tried to speak, but his words tangled in his throat. "Enough," his dad said, his voice softer but no less firm. "Go to bed. You're not thinking clearly. We'll sort this out in the morning." Liam opened his mouth to argue, but stopped. His mind was racing. If no one remembered the clown, then how could it be real? But he knew what he saw. The memory of Mr. Chuckles gripped him tighter than ever. That night, as Liam lay awake, he heard a soft knock at his window. He pulled back the curtain. Mr. Chuckles stood outside, his head tilted unnaturally to the side. In one hand he held a balloon, in the other, a red-stained clown shoe. Liam wanted to scream, but nothing came out. He shut his eyes, heart racing. When he opened them again, Mr. Chuckles was gone. The next morning, Tyler was still missing. His parents were pleading with the police, but no one had answers. And when Liam stepped onto the porch, a single balloon sat waiting. Drawn on its surface in black marker was a simple, smiling face. Below it, in shaky letters, it read, "You are next." Marcus kicked a loose stone along the pavement as he walked home. The quiet suburban street was mostly empty, except for the occasional rustling of leaves in the cool night breeze. The streetlights buzzed softly, casting flickering pools of light. He sighed, shifting his backpack. His dad always told him to take the main road home, but the shortcut past the old storm drain saved him almost 10 minutes. What was the worst that could happen? He walked faster. The old drain was just ahead, its metal grate barely visible in the dim glow. As he passed, something made him stop. A flash of color. Marcus blinked. A dirty yellow fabric poked out from the grate. Frowning, he took a step closer. It looked like a sock. A small sock. A chill ran down his spine. He recognized that sock. His little brother had the same pair, the kind with tiny red stripes at the top. He bent down, his fingers hovering over it, but a quiet giggle made him freeze. It came from the drain. Slowly, Marcus lowered his head, peering into the darkness. A face stared back, white paint, hollow black eyes, and a grin stretched too wide. A clown. Marcus scrambled back, his breath hitching. "What the—" The clown tilted its head, fingers curling around the bars of the drain. It didn't move closer. It just watched. Marcus's skin crawled. "Who are you?" he whispered. The clown's grin widened. "I have something for you," it said, voice smooth, playful. It lifted a hand, something dangling from its fingers. A tiny shoe. Marcus's stomach dropped. His little brother's shoe. His vision blurred with panic. He whipped out his phone, hands shaking as he opened the camera. Click. He looked at the screen. The drain was empty. Just blackness. No clown, no sock, no shoe. Marcus looked up from his phone. The clown was still there, but this time it was closer. Marcus stumbled back, his breath hitching. "How did you do that?" His voice cracked with panic. His eyes darted to the clown's hands. "And where did you get the shoe and sock from?" The clown just giggled, its head tilting unnaturally. "Come down and I'll show you." Marcus felt a cold chill crawl up his spine. His pulse pounded in his ears as he spun on his heel and bolted. His feet barely touched the ground as he sprinted toward his porch. Just before reaching the door, he hesitated, his heart hammering in his chest, before daring one last glance back. The clown was gone, but the drain wasn't empty. The sock was gone too, and in its place, something else had crawled up. A pale, wrinkled hand, small, child-sized, gripped the edge of the drain. Tiny fingers twitched. Then in the silence, a soft, familiar voice whispered from below. "Marcus, help me." The voice was hoarse, weak. It sounded exactly like his little brother. Marcus's breath hitched. His brother was safe in bed. He had to be. Slowly, the hand pulled itself higher, then another, then a head, small, frail, pale as bone. The thing had his brother's face, but its mouth was stretched into the same painted red grin as the clown's. Its black eyes locked onto Marcus. It giggled. Then, with a sickening jerk, it scuttled back into the darkness of the drain. The whisper followed him as the drain swallowed it whole. "See you soon."